Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's good to see all of you.
It's good to see you.
Okay, I want to talk about nothing. Now that we've got that done with, I said something somewhat tongue-in-cheek last weekend, end of Discourse. I was pointing out how the ego is the greatest barrier between one's soul, one's being, and the Holy One. And tongue-in-cheek, I just blurted out, get rid of it. And I meant that. I wanted to say I meant that, though I wanted to talk about what I mean by that. When I say get rid of the ego. Because this is interesting. Ani, self, ego, naturally and spontaneously arises in consciousness, as does thought. And this is interesting. We would have to understand that the arising of the sense of self, that the arising of this ego in and of itself isn't a problem. What we actually need to get rid of is ego grasping, self-cherishing, self-consciousness. Because when I say ego, I'm talking about a grasping state in which we're very separate from self and other, and so the one, very caught up in ourselves, very self-conscious, and hurting, quite frankly. It's a state of suffering. It's painful. We're caught in a very limited, very restrictive, very confining self-identity. And we need to get rid of it. And of course, we were talking in the context of moving in continuum. To pray, to contemplate, to meditate for others. And to bless others, and to pray over others, and to lay hands on others. We were talking about in this context. And in the words, get rid of it, what I mean is when you pray, when you contemplate, when you meditate, when you move in the continuum in ceremony, when you move to pray, meditate for others, to bless others, lose yourself in prayer. Lose yourself in contemplation. Lose yourself in that movement. Become nothing. Be nothing. And understand that oneness is the experience of no-thingness. And no-thingness is the experience of oneness. That is a secret, hidden in plain sight in Kabbalah. This key name for the infinite and eternal, I. No-thing. Not this, not that. But this no-thingness is everythingness, you see. This no-thingness is everythingness. What does it mean, merge with Shekinah? This living presence, this divine presence. What does it mean, merge with Holy One? but that you are nothing in the one. Becoming nothing in that instant, you are a direct emanation of the one. Isn't this interesting? So in the movement, as we go to take up this divine presence, it is our intention to let ourselves, as ourselves, disappear, to lose yourself as you are in yourself, to be yourself as you are in the one. And this is a direct shift in Kabbalistic terms between Yesh Mi Yesh and Yesh Mi Ein. Yesh Mi Yesh, that's the karmic continuum. There were my mother and father, there were the grandmother and grandfather, and back in time and coming from the generations, and here's my history, here's my name and form, this identity, myself as I am in myself. But there is within behind myself as I am in God, yourself as you are in God. Feeling me? And granted, in the experience of oneness, we will find that Yesh Mi Yesh too, its nature is Ein. That the nature of everything is Ein, this emptiness, this no-thing-ness. Yeah. So, self as I am in myself, self as I am in the one, are actually inseparable. But I must recognize this, I must realize this, I must go inside and go deeper still. I must be willing to go into that oneness, go into that no-thingness, and arise from it, and go into it, and arise from it, and go into it, and arise from it, deepening this recognition and realization of this dance of being and not being and not being, self and no self, self and no self, God and no God, God and no God. This dance, and in the midst of this is the secret that only the Holy One can reveal, and only this dancing can reveal the secret. There are no words for this. No one can tell you this. It must be experienced. It must be recognized. It realized. Only the Holy One reveals this. Only the no-thingness. And entering this no-thingness, this emptiness, reveals this, you see. And understand, to more and more embrace this Ein, this no-thingness. Welcome to a secret of peace and joy, subtle and sublime, that runs deep. A peace and joy that exists in happiness or sadness, in illness or wellness, in the midst of good or evil, light or darkness, living or dying. And I dare say, freedom. You see that ego, get rid of it. Welcome to the word deliverance. Dear friends, there is suffering in life that is natural. In this sense, I will use the word necessary. It's part of life. But there is so much that is unnecessary, that is additional, that is produced. because we're unwilling to go into this no-thingness. We're not recognizing, realizing this no-thingness, this freedom. Because release the self-grasping, release attachment, release aversion, all of a sudden you've got a different relationship with everything, beginning with self and thought and thinking, in which no longer attachment, no longer aversion. Here's this presence of awareness. Here's this spacious, radiant awareness, this beingness, regardless of what's transpiring on the surface. What a beautiful dance this becomes. No longer bound up in self-consciousness. Feel it? And here we're talking about when you pray, lose yourself in prayer. You stay, contemplate, lose yourself. You meditate, lose yourself. You take a presence in ceremony, moving energy for the people, blessing, lose yourself. Delight in it, lose yourself. Rejoice in it, lose yourself. Do it for its own sake. The joy of it, lose yourself. And see what happens. See the experience of being, ani, that arises when this happens. Experience the deliverance. And in enacting this in community and enacting this in sacred moments, understand then that one must practice enacting this in daily, mundane moments and activities. They must join their interior and exterior life, their spirituality and daily living. You cannot keep your interior life and meditation sessions in a bottle. You've got to let the spirit out the bottle. So we have this spirituality. We have this going within, living within. We have this going into oneness, going into no-thingness. We become deeply acquainted. We gain more and more self-knowledge and more knowledge of the one. And this must then be integrated with everything else in life. Meaning, I can learn to lose myself in what's happening in the moment, at work, in relationship, in a supermarket, so on. And being able to shift energy wherever, whenever, and not in the sense I'm going to project onto any moment anything that's not there or not happening. No, this trains me to be in what's happening, aware of what's happening just as it's happening. If there's a particular or peculiar movement of the Spirit of God, I'm aware of that. If it's a very, very ordinary moment, I'm aware of that. If something seems to be happening, I'm aware of that. If nothing seems to be happening, I'm aware of that. In that. So I'm not talking about projecting and conjuring here, because that's that journey into oneness. That's that journey into no-thingness. Being in reality as it is, God as God is. You as you are. No particular addition. And what I'm saying, Sarah was bringing up just out back a really wonderful example. We were talking some about this, and she was talking about two ways of being in a workday. One way of the days of work is being bummed that it's Monday morning. And of course, Friday afternoon, evening, rejoicing. That's one way. And so, being in the work day, bummed in the morning, getting happier in the afternoon when it's getting closer to 5 or whenever you get off. Contemplating it all as drudgery. So on, so forth, feel me? This is one way. But I'll also tell you that's unspiritual.
Yeah, amen.
I will tell you that's ungodly.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you that that hurts you. And that there is another way. What if one lost oneself in what was happening? Got into what was happening? Enjoyed being. Just being. Even in the most ordinary of moments. When nothing really is happening. But this is happening. And wow, I wonder what would happen. What would happen in a work week when I rejoice on Monday morning? Ah, another day. Praise be to the Holy One, from whom all of this emanates anew this day. I wonder what will happen today. We shall see. And constantly bringing oneself into the moment, losing oneself in the moment, and gaining oneself, I dare say. One's true self, one's inner being. How one is in the one. Becoming more and more aware of the oneness. See, my work days and my days off, if they're really that different, isn't that like two-ness? That doesn't sound like oneness to me. There must be another way at this. Solomon hints at it.
Yeah.
You know, he goes on about, how life is and the vanities under the sun and so on and so forth. And with all of this, what do you have? That you take joy in every moment of life. That you take joy in your work. In all that you are doing and in all that you are. So point being, as we learn to lose ourselves in prayer, contemplation, meditation, so on, then we may integrate doing just this in any action. And do realize this is intimately connected with seeing with the one, hearing with the one, feeling with the one, smelling and tasting and touching with the one. Being in the one anytime. All of the time. This is where we want to take our practice. And no, not in a self-conscious way. Absolutely. We would totally fall into self-consciousness sometimes and fall outside sometimes and fall into negativity sometimes. That's why. Just remember to return and be one. And you'll be fine. Keep doing that, and you'll gain great skill at abiding in the oneness. Your reaching, not reaching, will come to reaching. It will. And then a new vista of this oneness and this merger with the no-thingness will arise, and there you'll go, reaching and not reaching, until there's reaching. It's really lovely. Now, in the middle of this and connected to this, and I hope the connection will make sense to you. It might sound like a whole different discourse or topic. But not exactly, not if you look into it. Now, in Heart Essence teachings, we've been doing a lot of commenting on praying in oneness. Contemplating in oneness, so on. We'd like to look into that a little bit. Because, of course, we're going to start in two, as we always do. But it's very interesting. There's something to understand about teachings of spiritual practices and such in tradition and how we look at them. Where very much for us it's spiritual, not religion. religion, using a Yiddish story, religion is like this. So once upon a time, there was this fellow who just before he died gave to his daughter a priceless gem that he had acquired through all of his work in life. And he passed it on to her and said, "My dear daughter, this is yours. Do with it as you have need, or perhaps pass it on to your eldest child someday. But this is yours now." So she's, well, shouldn't be just keeping this around. So you know what? I'm going to bury this in the backyard and put a marker there. So I know where it is. And so she does this, and it's very wise, because that way burglars come and so on, they're never going to find this wonderful jewel. And so she waits and she waits, and she's getting old and she's getting gray, so she does call her eldest, who happens to be a son, and she brings him back there to tell him the secret and to pass the mantle to him of the gem. And so she kind of scoops away some earth and moves the marker she's got there. Just see, this is yours now, for you to do with what you will, or perhaps pass this on to your eldest child someday. Well, time goes by. He gets old and gray. And his eldest child is a daughter. And he takes the daughter back there. "Hey, I need to tell you this. There's a gem here. It's passed down from your great-great-grandfather here, great-grandfather. And I have tended this, and now it's yours. Always make sure to mark that place." So this one does that. Another generation comes. Well, they're shown the spot, and they put a marker. Next generation, next generation, next generation. This goes on for some generations, through which none have ever seen the gem. And there's this pile of stones marking the spot. And by the time that there's virtually a mountain of stones, no one even remembers what is under it. And in all that time, no one ever made use of the extreme value of that stone, that gem. It's a beautiful story. This is what happens when practices or rites and rituals become religious. The energy gets lost, the essence gets lost, the purpose gets lost. And then usually in the midst of loss, all kind of more stuff and explanations are heaped up on it, where the actual experience of realization is missing. Welcome to religion. Now, I say this to say something about spiritual practice. At the outset, as early aspirants, we very much have a need to learn various kinds of spiritual practice and actually take them up as they're taught by guide and lineage. This is very important and very good. We need to gain some experience. And so on. Along the way, though, these are all designed to spark inner experience. Like, let's take a Parksiv practice, for example. An image is given to begin with. A certain way is given to begin with. If I take this up over time, somewhere that practice is going to change. One day, I'm going to encounter a whole different presence, energy, image than the one that was originally given. Now, I might think, oh, I better go back to that. No. No, this is an evolution. You see, now the Spirit, and now Bartsu is in a process of revelation. And here, all of a sudden, we have a unique image that resonates and joins with who we are as a unique emanation of the one, as a unique individual. And that then becomes what we go with. But even more, practices as they are also teachings. And we want to find the essence. We want to know the gem. We want to learn the essence. So that over time, the form of the practice is shed to take up the essence of the practice. It's meant to be this way in our lineage. That's the way of our lineage. And it's important that we know that. And oh yes, we have powerful practices. But they become integrated over time. Hey, just being, they arise over time. That's called no practice. Just is happening. You feel any connection between losing oneself as one takes up prayer and taking up practices and losing the practice? Do you suppose those two mysteries are very connected somewhere? Because of course at first we don't lose ourselves in the prayer or the meditation. The straight path is simple. No one said it's easy. There is work, consistent, that striving for that realization and ever-deepening realization of the oneness, of the no-thingness, that's part of it. That's part of it. But remember the intention. The intention is reaching into the oneness, the no-thingness, living presence. As we abide in this, self disappears, the practice disappears. Now there's just this movement of Shekinah, this living presence, this emanation of the one. Anytime that is not the case, then we take up the practice again. Then we return to be one again. That's all. That's all. I was very inclined to put these two together for your consideration. And definitely, praying in oneness isn't just staying in a form. It's moving through the form. Just like the play of no-thingness. Really, you move through nothingness. And there's this other arising that happens. It's not even necessarily that you would want to stay there. That actually probably wouldn't be a good idea. Very dangerous to drive that way. Hard to find stuff in the supermarket that way too. And whatnot. So how does this stir you?
This is very much along some contemplations I've had during the week on what we mean by ego, because I've noticed ego, when we are not self-grasping, doesn't seem to be an issue.
Mm-mm.
So what we talk about, the false self, is this ego of self-grasping and the fear that causes the self-grasping. And that creates this false individual that we are not.
Yes.
And it seems as we are able to relax that, have faith so we can let go of the fear, so we can let go of our self-grasping, what is true begins to come forth. And so we're not working to get something, we're working to release the cover of what is in there. It's
Yes.
the truth of things.
Amen.
We are discovering, we are revealing,
Right.
Amen.
Right.
uncovering, as you say.
Yeah.
This is why meditation is so important.
Yes.
And then moving into the stillness, the silence, the no-thingness.
Right.
Because in that itself is the revelation of the one, this truth of oneness,
Right.
and our true being,
Yes.
as well as the revelation of the truth of any moment of arising of self, thought, so on. If the self is arising and I'm aware of the emptiness of the self,
Yes.
there's really no problem. If I'm not fixated on the self, there's no problem. It's quite lovely.
It is.
And the arising from moment to moment is very interesting. It's very beautiful. So, yeah.
I hope I'm not jumping to things that weren't given, but if I can speak what I'm hearing with help. You spoke of secret in the beginning of your discourse and shifting between Aniine and this dissolution, and the secret will be spoken, something will be revealed. And then you spoke of in the mundane work, in our daily work, and letting that arise, and there not being any separation, and the self-grasping, and then in practicing. And through it all, I was hearing the mystery of apocalypse, and that what is destroyed in apocalypse is self-grasping. And when the self-grasping is destroyed, this secret, this mystery, this jewel is revealed, whether it be at work, whether it be in our meditation, our daily life, so that there is no difference. The secret, this mystery exists everywhere, and this is apocalypse, which is destruction and revelation, that it can be revealed no matter what we're doing, where we're walking, when self-grasping is destroyed.
So what conceals is destroyed.
Yes.
Yes.
And that reveals.
Yes, and it's all, whether it be work, whether it be practice, whether it be some self-identity, whatever it is that we're grasping at, the self-grasping in the apocalypse, and the vision that we have of the apocalypse, all of this is falling away, and everything is falling away because self-grasping has ceased.
Yes.
And then the jewel, the mystery, the secret is revealed that exists in everything. It's not just in our practice. It's not just in our work. It is in everything.
Yes. And whether that's mercy or judgment completely depends on my relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
If I have gotten used to and embrace the no-thingness
Yes.
of my inner being and essence,
Yes.
and what is, truly embrace reality as God is, mercy is like, hallelujah, liberation. If I'm very bound up in the self-grasping and in that play of fear and desire and all, Judgment Day.
No matter what.
But it's the, right,
Yeah.
exactly, in anything.
Anything. It could be our
Yes.
house, it could be our work, it could be our
Yes.
practice, it could be anything.
Yes,
That's why
exactly.
it's all the same.
Yes.
It's our path and our journey. It's all the same no matter what we're doing.
Well, and it all comes to this, was just having an interesting experience on Wednesday. Went out to release my dad's ashes. And I find it very interesting. Things you're going to, that you're looking forward to, or things moving towards a powerful moment. Have you ever noticed when you get there what you find is flat? Have you ever noticed that? It's a really interesting phenomenon. Like, just so flat, so, ordinary. I mean, really, in such a moment, it amounts to a bunch of ashes poured into running water out of a plastic bag that's inside a pretty jar thing. And a little bit later, you discard the jar thing because there's no purpose for it anymore, and you go home. And yeah, popping up of days gone by and such, and flashing in mind. No particularly beautiful words. Actually, not that much needing to be said. And the observation, yes. It all comes to this. It is interesting. But so ashes pouring into a creek, sun shining, a breeze, a billowing cloud in clear water. Thunder in the distance. Then a streaming cloud, moving, reaching out to the jeweled lake in its depth. Flashing thoughts of days gone by. Once upon a time. Walking up a hill, discarding a jar and driving away, walking up the hill, clouds coming overhead, cooling, and eventually, rain. It is done. Everything ends this way. There's something about reality in moments where there's this flatness, the ordinariness. Sometimes we're trying to avoid just the ordinariness. The fact is, well, yeah, in a moment like that, it's what it is. That's okay. And there's that flatness. Did we ever read, though, Moses asking to see the face of Yahweh and Yahweh saying no? Get in the cleft of the rock. My presence will pass by, and after my presence has passed by, you will see my backside. In other words, in retrospect. And the point I'm getting at is, in the moment, this flatness that we can frequently experience, or the just extreme ordinariness, that's what it is. But there's so much there. Do you know in such a moment you're gazing into nothingness? That the flatness, for lack of a better word, you're gazing into the nothingness. As you gaze into the flatness, the ordinariness, the nothingness. Profoundly. But then what happens? Things unfold after the fact, don't they? Do you feel it?
Yes.
All of a sudden, there's all this inside that movement in your experience.
Yeah.
It's just a moment, far too much. It takes time to unfold with you as you. And this is just the way it is. It's really interesting to watch if we'll embrace it. So that what happens if there's nothing wrong with it? There's nothing more, nothing less, nothing better, blah, 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 that you were to do. It's what it is. It's what it was. And then, carrying in one's heart, abiding, one sees the living presence having passed by. How lovely. And then gazing into it and recognizing the no-thingness. How beautiful. How meaningful. Yeah. Everything comes to this. Wow. How magical. This existence and wow. It's intense. So, talk about apocalypse.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
just instead of a fancy jar, I don't know. I think a coffee can's great, like a Yuba band coffee can. Well, it's just something. It's just to take point A to point B. Well, discard it anyhow.
My husband's a humidor.
Hey, well, you know, I just, and you are what you eat and drink. You know, in my lifetime, I've drank so much coffee. Anyhow, so the apocalypse, and there's revelation.
Yes.
And it goes to that discovery, the uncovering, the unveiling. Yeah.
I so appreciate what you've shared, because sometimes our experience, and probably always or most always, it's not going to be the face of God, but we might be able to see what has just passed by. So what unfolds afterwards is extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And the jewel might be in it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. But notice how we need to be willing to lose ourselves and just be in the experience and let it be what it is.
Yes.
No arbitrary addition. Really, even being able to say it, as shocking as to some it might be, oh, it was more than that. Like, no, whoa. No, at a certain level, not really. Just saying.
No grasping.
Right? And it's being in, and then we have our unfolding of the living presence.
Thank you.
Interesting play.
I enjoy the contemplation of Adonai and the letters of Adonai in this, in that we've been talking about image and likeness and how Adonai ends in a laugh, Yod, which is the 10, and so it can be any. Malkut can be any of the names of God, embody any of the names of God.
And all of them.
And all of them.
Or none of them.
And then we have the Latin Nun, which I think is beautiful because it's like this gate of death before we get to the Yod. So it talks about how if one is willing to lose oneself, one can be in a state of emptiness to receive any of the names of God.
Well, and it also says, if I'm willing to lose myself as I am in myself, I will realize myself as I am in God. And then, hopefully, myself as I am in myself may arise as who I am in the One. In other words, perhaps then I can be who I am.
So, in my experience, when, how can I say, wrestling with ways that we're not in God, it seems like the wrestling amplifies everything. So really, it's more about and letting go and letting be than trying to change ego, because ego, how can I say, the more you bring awareness to ego, the bigger ego seems to get.
Well, my dear sister, can I ask this may sound like a silly question.
Go for it.
Who's wrestling the ego?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. I do.
Do you ever think there's something like cell division amidst the ego sometimes?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if I will be willing to go into the oneness, into the no-thingness, into this presence of awareness, there can be directing of thought, of desire, so on. It's amazing. True. But also I'll find that most things naturally and spontaneously resolve themselves. Naturally and spontaneously self-liberate. And no wrestling. So, what happens if we lose the combatants? Like lose yourself in prayer, lose the combatants.
Yeah, it's right there.
Mm-hmm. But sometimes I think we need to engage in the wrestling until we can recognize the nothingness of it, and yes, even the silliness of it. Oh, and who is wrestling who? That's a wonderful meditation. In moments we catch ourselves in these weird wrestling matches, trying to pin the ego to the ground, step back and ask that question. Who is wrestling who? And who is asking? Hey, it's really beautiful. It does something. It just like releases something. Where one's not even after an answer.
It seems like when you're in the one doesn't really care, whether one is wrestling in ego or what kind of moment one has. You just let go and be in the being, and then it's oneness.
Well, here's the thing. The one's having all of these experiences, sister. Of wrestling and not wrestling, of peace and war, living and dying, heaven and hell, you name it, good and evil, and admixture, shopping, sex, prayer. This gets interesting as a contemplation of the one having all of this experience. Interesting to see all of this with those eyes, and hear with those ears, and feel with that heart. All of a sudden things are in a different context. It's like the word revelation. When there's revelation, all of a sudden we are aware, we are able to perceive something that just a moment ago we were not able to perceive. That's revelation. Doesn't mean it wasn't there. It was there. We just weren't able to perceive it or weren't aware. And then when we are, all of a sudden, well, the world is as it is, was, will be, and yet completely changes with this new perception, this new awareness. It's lovely.
I wonder if then this we can hear, for some this keeps coming up in this discourse of the moment where Elijah comes to Elisha and this mantle is thrown over him, and afterwards Elijah says, "What do I have to do with you?" And this whole thing plays out with Elisha, where kind of at first, I gotta go do this and that.
Say
and
goodbye to mom and dad,
Yeah.
hug my brothers, and kiss the dog, and
then there's a shift that happens with him. I'm hearing almost there's an opportunity in each moment where it's almost like, what do I have to do with you? Kind of,
yeah, what did I do to you? What do I have to do to you? With you?
yeah, where the attaching, I kind of hear, get rid of it, or losing oneself in that as well.
Oh, Elisha was definitely having a moment of disappearing,
Yeah.
of dying, to be reborn. So he was losing himself to find himself. He thought he knew who he was, but he didn't, because Elisha was death.
I'm hearing the answer to the question, when you are 2, what will you do?
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. And the mantle of Eliyahu is all about being brought into the no-thingness. It is all about that. So, what did I do to you? What do I have to do with you? Who are you? Who am I? What are you? What am I? How was that kind of like that? Oh. In the one, all is nothing. There is only the one. And yes, there is something in us that does tend to initially panic in a full embrace of the one, the no thing. That's true. That's why it said fear is the beginning of knowledge. Or wisdom. Fear of the one is the beginning of knowledge or wisdom. Of course, its fruition. Its fruition is love. The fruit of which is union, oneness, you see? But of course, there's that part that at first.
Yeah.
Malachi gestures in a cartoon, screamy way.
It seems when we try to think about oneness, it creates two-ness.
I'm thinking about the 1, 2, 2, 2. I'm thinking about the 1, 2, 2, 2. Yeah. Correct.
So it's a non-thinking thing.
It's a being,
It's a
feeling
Yeah.
thing, an awareness thing. And then, as thought arises, fine. But the turning and looking, thinking, nope.
I was just noticing that. Okay, thinking about the well. It doesn't feel like one anymore.
Outside. No wonder meditation in teachings, we talk so much about the stillness of the silence
Yes.
and the releasing of the thought and thinking. Those old meditators from the past were onto something. And what's the most intimate terms for revelation in Scripture? Still small voice, speaking silence, sound of sheer silence. This is a good point to conclude. O Holy One of Being, we pray, may the silence in us merge fully with the great silence that you are. We pray that this peace is in the world this day for all who desire it. May it be realized. May it be remembered. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.